This is the story of a millionaire doctor
Adam got pockets and pockets full of money every time I see him.
and his supermodel wife. This is the story of a millionaire doctor
Adam got pockets and pockets full of money every time I see him.
and his supermodel wife.
Gorgeous, tall woman, just had a presence.
Their beautiful baby is destined for stardom.
Oh my God, she's just a gorgeous baby, honestly. She's like a princess.
Everybody is going bonkers.
911. Can I get an officer out here in Golden Eagle?
Until tragedy strikes.
This looks like a drowning. Looks like an accident.
But truth is love's first casualty
If you touch her again, I punch you in the face right there.
when what you see is not what you get.
Love will make a person do some crazy things.
It's June 2012, and in Tallahassee, Florida, guests arrive for the party of the year. For 1-year-old Hyra Frash. This is no ordinary kid's party.
This was the birthday party of all birthday parties. Everything was gold and sparkly and ornate, and it was just opulence.
That's Hyra's mom, Samira. She's been planning this party for months, and there's been no expense spared. Samira's husband, Adam Frash, is all too happy to foot the bill for his daughter's birthday extravaganza.
Hyra was a daddy's girl. You know, he did dote on her. Hyra was his little princess.
These are hardly amateur home videos. The family has employed a professional videographer, Joel Silver, to capture young Hyra's life. They are certain she is destined for greatness.
It was definitely a strange request, but I said, let's do it, because I need to see this.
And it's clear Samira and baby Hyra share a close and loving bond.
Samira just absolutely loved Hyra. Hyra was her favorite thing that she had ever created or done. So she had so much joy with this baby. She said, I want to share this beautiful baby with the world.
Since March, Joel has been filming the jet-setting family on their travels. The Frashes want little Hyra to become a celebrity, and having a camera crew in tow seems to be doing the trick.
Samira said, you know, we're traveling around. Everywhere we go, everybody wants to see Hyra. Everybody wants to meet Hyra.
Oh my God, she's just a gorgeous baby, honestly. She's like a princess. She has everything. She's gorgeous.
Wherever they go, the Frash family tries to create the maximum stir.
People are turning their heads. People are watching. People are wanting to see what's happening.
What's your name?
People are coming up to see Hyra, and everybody is, you know, really, they're absolutely going bonkers.
The crowd would just go wild because they would all want to know, who is she? Who is this? Who is her mother? Who is this baby?
Mom Samira's life story reads like a movie script. Born in Madagascar, Samira was a pop star in her home country. In her 20s, she moved to France with dreams of becoming a supermodel. In 2008, she met Adam Frash in a Parisian nightclub. Despite the language barrier, the millionaire doctor made his intentions clear.
They fell in love, I think, instantly. Adam said, I want to marry you. I want to be with you for the rest of my life. Come live with me and let's start our life together.
Adam's money offers Samira a life of security and luxury. He's a podiatrist with a multi-million-dollar practice near his hometown of Tallahassee, Florida.
Adam had a very, very successful practice. Money is no object. It's a fun lifestyle to live.
Samira quits her modeling career and moves to Florida to live with Adam. In 2009, the couple marry in a lavish ceremony in Las Vegas. 2 years later, baby Hyra arrives to complete the family.
It was the picture of happiness and a brand new family.
This, Hyra, this, look, Hyra, this here, look.
Joel Silver is now filming the family's every move, joining them on 5-star vacations around the country. Hyra has no fear of the water, unlike Mom, who can't swim.
So impressed with Samira in the water. So impressed you got in the water.
I can't go more than that. Look at me.
But filming the Frash family isn't just about capturing happy memories on camera. Samira has always paid her own way in life and sees a chance to live the American dream and help support her family.
She's adorable. What to say?
Samira wanted to build almost like a lifestyle brand around her daughter.
I got her card and everything. I'm gonna go to her website and on her Twitter page. Very cute. Very cute.
She's a modeling baby. She's actress. She's a...
It might look crazy on camera, but Samira's enthusiasm sweeps everyone along.
Samira knew how to create a buzz around it, and so I loved watching that. And I felt that she had an amazing knack for drumming up interest in a brand.
Samira has a vision to start a luxury clothing line for babies and sell it through Hyra's very own website, Hyra.com. With her flair for fashion and Hyra's angelic looks, Samira plans to create a kids' fashion empire.
She was determined to make this project successful. She wanted people all over to know Hyra. And if there was anybody who was going to do it, you know, Samira had so much energy, so much passion, and she had the resources to make it happen.
Samira's husband, Adam, knows how over the top this whole thing seems, but he's happy to play along.
Adam's trying to support her and fund it, and we're trying to make her dreams come true.
She's grown up on the website now. She have 100,000 of the fans. She have 200,000 views.
Hyra.com seems like a brilliant business idea for the viral video era, and Samira's hard work is starting to pay off.
I'm especially noticing that Hyra's YouTube videos and her social media presence was building.
On a shopping trip to Vegas, Samira makes sure Joel features the names of high-end luxury brands.
We started to talk to some different folks in terms of productions and companies and networks to see, you know, where the end would possibly take us.
They film Hyra getting into a limo in front of the hotel. Where are they going? Doesn't matter. It's all about showing off the ride. From Vegas to New York City, little Hyra is making waves.
Seeing the crowd's reaction to her, because it was as if she was already a celebrity.
So at this point, everything is going full steam ahead.
And Hyra isn't the only one grabbing attention. When Samira married Adam and started a family, she put her career ambitions on hold. Now, she's getting another shot at stardom. She started songwriting again and is shooting her own music videos, financed by Adam.
I think Samira loved the glitz and the glamour and the cameras and all that. If you have the resources to try to achieve your dreams and you can do it, then why not?
The Frash family are living Samira's American dream.
Everybody is really just on an all-time high. What I didn't know was the next chapter of the book was really going to change.
The boat. Focus the Niagara Falls. There's a little falls over there, look.
In the spring of 2012, the Frash family is busy building an online following for their baby daughter Hyra's website.
Well, nice meeting you.
But living a life on camera while also running a busy podiatry practice is beginning to take its toll on Adam.
I think Adam wanted to be there. I think he wanted to support his wife, but I think he was sort of losing a little bit of interest.
Always keep you with this baby. Oh my God. Okay, hold on. I got my revenge.
He was modeling.
It's little wonder Adam is exhausted. While he works hard for his money, he also likes to play hard. And one of his favorite places to let loose is Vegas, with best buddy Kendall Lindsay.
He never slept unless he's actually flying or driving. And when he wakes up, he's like nonstop. He's running the whole time. And he'll stay up in Vegas all night.
The trips to Vegas give Adam a break from Samira's nonstop filming schedule.
Adam got pockets and pockets full of money. Every time I see him, he's never without money. And he didn't mind sharing it.
As the months progress, Adam spends more time away from his family.
I don't know. Mommy's not very strong with this, but we're gonna try and do something. Mommy's not strong for design this.
Things were starting to change a little bit and started to be less of a full family unit working on this, and it was just more of Hyra and Samira.
When Adam is back home, the couple's relationship is tense.
Don't play with me if you don't want a big problem. Oh. She eats it. Take off. That's what. Adam, don't.
The fighting started to happen. They started to have disagreements, and they weren't always getting along anymore.
Adam, if you touch her again, I'm gonna punch you in the face. I'm not joking. If you touch her again, I'll punch you in the face right there. Will you let give it to her? You know she's gonna do that. You always say that stupid like that.
The cracks in the marriage are spilling into the footage filmed for Hyra.com.
Some of the arguments would be over very mundane things, and both of them were very passionate, though, and they always, when they had their positions, they wanted to stick to it.
Despite the tensions, by August 2012, Samira is pregnant again. She hopes a second child might bring her closer to Adam. But he has no interest in playing happy families.
I got it.
Every weekend, he's out with his buddies.
Samira was hurting a lot because she missed her family. She missed home. She had essentially given that up to move to America with Adam.
In a bid to save their marriage, Samira tries to keep Adam on a shorter leash.
He came to play golf. It was a 4-day package with room and board and everything. He came to play golf one day with us, and she never let him come back. I said, man, you need to stand up for yourself. You know, don't take all that stuff.
Kendall doesn't like the way Samira is treating his friend.
Figuring out what kind of person she really was, because he really wanted to have fun with the guys and stuff, but he did whatever she said. Sometimes you tell yourself what you want to hear, and you believe it, and you live it. And I think that's what happened in that relationship.
But Adam and Samira aren't willing to give up on their marriage.
Kaina! Hey! There we go.
On April 13th, 2013, the Frash family welcomed their second daughter into the world. For a while, baby Skyna unites her parents.
I see you, Sky. Look at mommy a little bit. You like it? Oh, I love you guys.
But the peace doesn't last long.
So you're really not gonna come? Why?
No, I'm not going anywhere.
There was arguments, and they were living sometimes in different houses and taking breaks from each other, and all sorts of terrible things happening in this marriage.
One night in August 2013, Samira discovers explicit texts on Adam's phone.
Thanks, honey.
She got upset and she attacked him.
Adam presses charges for battery. He also files an injunction against Samira and applies for temporary custody of their daughters.
Yeah, police, please.
I think they were just really starting to just come apart.
To Samira's devastation, Adam wins temporary custody of the girls.
When I saw her, she was deathly thin. She couldn't hardly sleep. She couldn't hardly eat. And she kept saying, "He's trying to destroy me."
But Samira isn't going down without a fight. She reaches out to lawyer Annabelle Diaz.
So the first time I met Samira, she wanted to talk to a French-speaking attorney because law enforcement had basically assisted Adam in removing her children from the home. And if you want to make sure that Samira goes insane, you take her kids.
Thank you for seeing me so soon.
With Annabelle's help, Samira wins back temporary custody.
She was just so happy and whole to have them back, and she did not let those babies out of her sight.
She also begins divorce proceedings. Adam moves out to his beach house in Panama City, and the relationship looks finished.
Samira started being the Samira that we know again. She started putting on makeup, getting dressed, going out. She was very happy. She had her house back. She had her life back.
But as Samira makes plans for her new future, a chastened Adam decides to try and repair the rift on a grand scale.
Samira had so many text messages from Adam. I mean, it was really hard to keep up.
Adam's texts and phone calls go unanswered, but he's not giving up on the love of his life.
Good morning. I love you. I'll never stop. I want to rededicate myself to you. I love you, baby, so much.
February 22nd, 2014. In Tallahassee, Florida, maintenance man Gerald Gardner arrives for work at the Golden Eagle Gated Community, home to Adam and Samira Frash.
911, what's the address of the emergency?
Ma'am, can I get an officer out here in Golden Eagle? It's a lady laying in the pool, in her backyard in her pool.
Okay. Is she awake?
No, ma'am, she's dead. Oh, man, I hope.
Is there any way you can jump in and get her?
Well, ma'am, she been in there, I don't know how long, she completely gone. And I want y'all to come take pictures of it before I take her out.
Okay, I've got somebody coming. I just wanted to make sure that, we could try and get her help if we could, but you said she's completely gone?
Yeah, she did. She drowned. Somebody had to kill her.
Emergency services arrive at the Frash household. Police seal off the property, while in the backyard, it's clear to EMTs that Samira is beyond help. Detectives will need to determine if Samira's death was a dreadful accident, a suicide, or something more sinister. Jason Newland is assigned as an investigator for the state attorney's office.
It was just a robe laying on the side of the pool.
Then, a glittery sandal tucked beneath a hose pipe catches his eye.
It looks like she's tripped, looks like she fell. She's in the bottom of the pool. She can't swim, she's drowned. It looks like an accident.
But investigator Newland isn't convinced.
You start looking at it a little bit closer, and this sandal is it's not a closed toe, but it's a looped toed sandal. It's not something that just falls off your foot.
Investigator Newland heads inside.
There's cats, there's lions, there's cheetahs, there's sculptures. I mean, I really can't even explain this house to you.
The property is packed with valuables.
If somebody wanted to steal something from this residence, the supply was endless.
And yet, there's no evidence of a robbery.
Nothing stood out to you as somebody broke in here, killed somebody, and stole a bunch of items.
Detectives hope maintenance man Gerald Gardner can shed some light on Samira Franch's death.
You know, if you listen to the 911 call, Gerald immediately can tell you she was murdered. She didn't jump in that pool. What makes you say this? How do you know this much about her?
A detective takes Gerald aside for an interview. He reveals he spoke to Samira the previous evening.
Did you hear anybody in the background or anything?
Nope.
Okay. So you don't know whether the kids were there or whether...
Well, yeah, the kids were with her. I heard her in the background. Because she was like, Mommy, Mommy, Mommy. I heard her in the background. But after I hung up, I don't know what happened. And all I know is I went there this morning and I found her dead in the pool. And that is that's very strange, man. Because she couldn't swim. She always told her, I can't swim, so I don't play in the water and I don't play around it. And she did.
More than that.
Suspicious of Gerald's account, detectives pull footage from the security camera covering the entrance to the Frash's gated community. It shows Gerald arriving for work at 10:51 a.m., just like he said.
You can see him get out of the car, and you can see him make phone calls. You can see him hitting the buttons and waiting for somebody to let him in. And eventually he was able to get in.
Gerald's call to 911 came just 9 minutes later.
It had been very difficult for him to have committed a homicide in that short amount of time.
Everything Gerald has told police checks out. He is ruled out of the investigation. Detectives are no closer to discovering how Samira died. And with no sign of her two young children, fears are growing for their safety. Police put out an Amber Alert for Hyra and Skyna Frash.
You have to prepare for the worst, hope for the best. And so our ultimate goal was to find these two children, hopefully alive.
At home in Tallahassee, Kendall Lindsay hears the news.
I called Adam right away, and he answered. I said, hey, man, you hear what's going on around your house? He said, no, what's going on? I said, man, they said they found your wife in the pool, drowned. And he just got quiet for a while, and I heard the baby say, Daddy, why are you crying?
It seems the girls are safe with Adam at his beach house in Panama City. Adam assures Kendall that he'll head back to Tallahassee immediately. But before he can set off, police reach him.
Law enforcement located Adam with the children in Panama City. And Adam asked the question, is my wife okay?
The officers confirmed that Samira was found dead that morning. As the husband of the deceased, he'll need to answer a few questions.
Mr. Foster, did they read you your Miranda rights?
Yes, sir.
And
you understood them? Yes, sir. That's right, you still want to speak with us?
Yes, sir.
Adam tells detectives the marriage was back on track. He'd been over to the house a lot these past few weeks.
How long have you said you've been there? For how long? Staying there?
I'm spending the night probably a good month or so.
In the hopes of trying to work things out?
Yes, sir.
And how is that going?
It was actually going pretty good.
Adam explains he'd spent the previous day with Samira and the girls running errands. But when they got home late in the evening, Samira started drinking.
How much do you think she had to drink?
I would say close to a couple bottles of champagne.
By herself?
By herself. She's got such a low body weight that it really hits her more. If she drinks 1 or 2 glasses of champagne, she's nice and calm and even passionate and things like that. Good evening. If she drinks 3 or 4, I'm dealing with Jekyll.
She obviously had a lot of drink. Did you become violent last night, that night?
Not really too bad. She was, actually we made love in the living room.
When you say you made love, you had sex?
Mm-hmm.
Adam explains that Samira was finding it tough looking after the girls alone and asked him to take them out the next day.
That's no problem. I always try to accommodate her, but I'm trying to work things out with a marriage and that.
When they left home at 8 a.m., Samira was asleep in bed. Detectives checked security video against Adam's account. It shows Adam leaving his home with the girls at around 8 a.m.
There's nothing out of the ordinary. You can see Adam, and you can see Adam's red shirt, and as the car pulls through, there's nothing suspicious.
Everything in Adam's account matches the CCTV, but his lack of emotion raises questions.
You sat up here and broke down I don't know how many times, and not one tear has dropped out of your eye yet.
Well, I've already teared out for 6 hours here, sir. I mean, if you know how much I love this woman, you would...
There's no doubt you will not hear me dispute that. But you know as well as I do that love brings about some crazy, impulsive reactions sometimes. Love will make a person do some crazy things.
Love her dearly.
Love her to death, huh?
That term, that's not appropriate for you to be saying that.
A lack of emotion doesn't equal hard evidence.
People react a lot of different ways. So you can't really draw a lot of conclusions from the way a person reacts to a traumatic situation.
Thanks for seeing me.
While investigators check out Adam Frash's story, his best friend, Kendall Lindsay, also gets a call from the sheriff's department.
One of the situations that kind of was in the background of all this was Adam's best friend, Kendall Lindsay, and Samra didn't get along either.
Kendall is open with the detective about his frosty relationship with Samira.
I wanted to be straight and forward with this guy. No, I didn't like her. I didn't like her at all.
He's also asked to come to the station for an interview. And what he's about to tell detectives will put him firmly in the spotlight.
If you really want to make yourself a suspect, interview like Kendall Lindsay.
Oh my God, okay, hold on. I got my ribbon.
Wannabe social media star Samira Frash has always been a larger-than-life character. But just 2 years after these videos were filmed, Samira is dead. Her husband Adam's best friend, Kendall Lindsay, is being questioned about his relationship with Samira. He doesn't hold back revealing the bad blood between them.
She was like the rest of them, gold digging, At least the doc gave me money, I loaned me money. I worked for her. Of course, it's his wife, she lay with him, all that, but I could see through what she was doing, so.
He didn't try to sugarcoat it and say we had a good friendship. He's like, I hated her and she hated me.
Kendall reveals Samira called him the previous day and accused him of stealing. He saved the voicemail she left for him.
Listen to me, son of a. You take my stuff the day you and Adam arrest me. I need my stuff back. I'm gonna show you. You're nothing. You are a piece of.
The explosive voicemail is clear evidence of animosity between the two. But Kendall has an alibi.
I stayed home all night long. Went to work, and you can't have phones at work, so the phone's locked.
Detectives check out Kendall's story. They can find no evidence that he stole from Samira, and his alibi is rock solid.
We were able to alibi Kendall out being at work, and his phone records put him far away from the scene.
With another suspect ruled out of the investigation, police request the medical examiner's report on Samira's death. It reveals that Samira suffered blunt force trauma to the head before she drowned in the pool.
She had multiple impacts, one on the left side of her head and then one on the right side of her head. Inconsistent with her having tripped and fallen and bumped her head.
Her death couldn't have been accidental.
If you trip and fall and bump your head, you're not going to bump both sides of your head.
Toxicology tests also show that Samira had 0 alcohol in her body. But that's not what Adam told police.
Yeah, wait a minute. Adam said she was drunk, and she wasn't drunk. So you've got to start looking closer at Adam again.
Adam told police he and Samira were trying to save their marriage. But texts and photos extracted from Adam's phone reveal something different. He was involved with at least 3 other women.
We learned that Adam had a type. And when I say a type, it is almost eerie to line up photos of his girlfriends. An athletic build, rather tall African-American females.
The case against Adam Frash is mounting by the minute.
Right now, this case is looking pretty straightforward. And then, out of nowhere, a neighbor in Golden Eagle reaches out to law enforcement.
He claims to have seen someone outside the Frash residence on the morning of Samira's death.
The neighbor indicated that approximately 10:25 to 10:45 a.m., so just about 20-30 minutes prior to her body being discovered, that he observed a woman meeting the description of Mrs. Frash loading something into a black SUV in the driveway of the Frash residence.
The neighbor's statement sends the investigation into a tailspin.
The description we had of this female in the driveway fit the victim to a T, but it fit one of the girlfriends he had in Miami. It fit one of the girlfriends he had in Fort Walton Beach. It fit every girl he was running around with at the time.
And if the female was Samira, it means Adam couldn't have killed her. He was seen on CCTV leaving the neighborhood several hours earlier. Investigators pull all available surveillance cameras, hoping to identify the mystery female.
We went through hours. We went through every single black SUV that pulled out of that neighborhood, identified that person, interviewed them, and none of them matched the description. None of them were black females. None of them had anything to do with this case.
Police conclude that the woman on the driveway was indeed Samira Frash. But the neighbor got the date wrong. It wasn't the day of the murder.
Okay.
It means Adam Frash is once again the prime suspect. And the trawl for surveillance video has uncovered new footage. of Adam and Samira returning to their house on the night before she was found dead.
You see Mr. Frash exit his vehicle. He appears to be helping her get into the neighborhood, or possibly she's not wanting to open the gate because she doesn't want him to follow her in. He opens the door and she kind of slams it closed.
It contradicts Adam's claim that he and Samira were getting along great that evening.
I think the surveillance is pretty clear that they're involved in some type of argument. That certainly doesn't mean that, he murdered her.
Police analyze Samira's cell phone, but no one is prepared for what they're about to find. Of Adam apparently trying to run Samira off the road. At Bay County Sheriff's Office, alarmed detectives lean on Adam Frash. They press him on the events leading to his wife's death.
What do you think happened?
I don't know. I'm worried that she may have tripped on the water hose that was out there. I don't know if I could even live with myself if she tripped on that damn hose.
During Adam's interview, he goes, I hope she didn't trip over the hose. What do you mean tripped over the hose? How do you know the hose was in the pool? How do you know her sandal was under the hose? I thought you left.
In Tallahassee, Florida, Dr. Adam Frash claims he had nothing to do with his wife's mysterious death. But multiple inconsistencies in his story arouse suspicion.
Things like Mr. Frash lying about the alcohol consumption, things like him anticipating the hose tripping and falling defense are things that begin to add up.
Adam's claim that Samira asked him to look after their children on the day she died also strikes prosecutors as implausible.
All of the interviews that we conducted with her family and friends, as well as reviewing the court documents, all indicated that there was no way she would ever allow Mr. Frash to take the kids anywhere without her.
Prosecutors lack the concrete proof needed to charge Adam with murder.
There was no DNA, no smoking gun that could definitively prove that Mr. Frash was the one that committed the crime.
And medical examiners struggle to determine when Samira died.
Submersion in the cold water, it interferes with the cooling of the body. Ultimately, we're never able to prove the time of death for Mrs. Frash.
But detectives decide the circumstantial evidence against Adam Frash is enough for an arrest.
When you start to put it all together, the big picture is a very convincing and compelling one of his guilt.
On November 7th, 2014, Adam Frash is arrested and charged with first-degree murder. 3 years later, in January 2017, the case comes to court. Adam pleads not guilty.
I felt very confident at all times that Mr. Frash was the killer, but I was always very concerned about my ability to successfully prosecute the case and get the conviction.
At the trial, prosecutors maintained there was never any reconciliation between Adam and Samira. Samira had successfully filed for divorce and was about to be awarded the marital home, full custody of the children, and alimony. She'd even gotten a court order prohibiting Adam from their property.
Things were really going her way, and I think that shift in power is what made Adam Frash go off the deep end and really escalated the situation to where it became violent, dangerous, and deadly.
Prosecutors lay out what they believe really happened the night Samira died. On the evening of February 21st, 2014, Adam somehow talked his way back into staying at the house.
Adam had the ability to buy his way out of a lot of problems, and he always wound up on top with money. This was the first time Adam was losing.
Look, I don't exactly know what to say.
At some point in the evening, the couple had another explosive argument, and Adam lashed out.
This is over.
Adam struck Samara on the side of the face with an object, and she didn't get up.
Samira was unconscious, but still alive. So Adam threw her in the pool to drown and to remove any trace of his DNA.
Instead of calling 911 and getting somebody to come help her, he took the alternative. He finished it.
Afterwards, Adam placed Samira's sandal under the hose to make it look like she tripped and fell. Just before 8 a.m., he bundled the sleeping girls into his car and fled the scene. On January 26th, 2017, Adam Frash is found guilty of first-degree murder and is handed a life sentence.
When I saw the news that Adam had been convicted of her murder, I wept. I was shocked and relieved, and all I could do was just cry.
I don't know. Mommy's not very strong with this, but yeah.
Samira had dreamed of the perfect family and the perfect life.
I can only hope to run into someone that reminds me of her with all of her fabulousness and opulence and glory.
A woman driven by hope for her children.
I hope, one day, her kids will be able to see, how much their mother loved them.
This was supposed to be the American dream. This was like a picture-perfect family. And it was destroyed by the one person who was supposed to protect them all.
Human beings are strange creatures. They kill for the most ridiculous reasons you could possibly imagine. I have spent my life staring into the abyss of the criminal mind, and if I have learned one thing, it is that greed is a poison that turns a human soul into something hollow and cold. My. You see this case of Nick Cordova, and you have to ask yourself, are there truly coincidences in this world? Or just people who think they are smarter than they actually are? I tell you, I have seen every variation of the desperate business partner. The man who thinks he can write his own ending by erasing someone else. And every time, they leave behind a trail of incompetence that would be laughable if it were not for the body left cold on the office floor. Consider the reality of the situation. You have a man like Nick Cordova, a guy who works hard, a guy who cares about his family, a guy who actually believes in the inherent goodness of people, and he walks right into a web spun by a man who seems to have lived his life on the fringes of decency. When you hear about Nick feeling like he was being watched, that is not paranoia. That is the instinct of a man sensing a predator in the room. You have to be kidding me if you think it was just luck that Dave Sweetman was pacing, asking questions, and acting like a man with a burning fuse just waiting for the explosion. The scene that day in May 2020 was a stage-managed nightmare. A lobby, an office, a desk moved out of place, and a partner who claims he was hit in the head and knocked senseless, yet somehow manages to have a clear enough head to hand over a gun barrel first while pretending to be the victim of a robbery that looks, to any experienced eye, exactly like a script written by an amateur. The surveillance cameras tell the story better than any witness could, showing a prearranged dance, a truck waiting, and a cold-blooded act in the lobby. You look at that footage, and you do not see a struggle. You see an execution. What bothers me the most is the audacity of the deception. The cash found in the pocket, the forged signatures, the insurance policies that grew from a few $100,000 to $8 million. It is the arrogance of the criminal who believes that if he hides enough files, if he redacts enough pages, he can simply bury the truth. But the truth has a funny way of breathing, even under 200 pages of black ink. The victims in these cases are not just the ones who lose their lives. They're the families, like Alicia, who are forced to become investigators in their own tragedy because the system turns a blind eye to the rot. You look at a man like Dave, and you see the classic profile of someone who hides behind administrative delays and confusion of police investigations. They want you to look at the two men in the masks, the ones who pulled the trigger, while they stand in the corner, acting hysterical, hoping that the fog of the crime scene will shield them from the scrutiny they so richly deserve. It is a pathetic attempt to distance oneself from the consequences of one's own design. I tell you, no matter how clever they think they are, there's always a thread that pulls the whole sweater apart. In this case, the thread was the greed, the life insurance, and the sheer persistence of a wife who refused to let her husband become a cold case file. The tragedy here is not just the loss of Nick, but the enduring shadow of a man who still operates his business as if he did not leave a trail of destruction in his wake. It is a dark, hollow story of human behavior, and it is the reason I spent my years putting people behind bars, so they could spend their time reflecting on the lives they shattered for a handful of paper. Human beings are strange creatures. They walk through this world tethered to one another by invisible threads of love, obligation, and sometimes a cold, calculated selfishness that leaves you breathless. You look at a case like this, and you realize that some people live their entire lives behind a mask, playing a role in a stage play that only they have the script for. I have spent decades staring into the abyss of the human heart, and I tell you, more often than not, the people who claim to love the loudest are the ones hiding the sharpest knives. My, you have a woman here, Laura Sweetman, a pediatric neurologist, a woman who dedicated her life to healing others, yet she could not heal her own home. She was brilliant, scientific, a woman of facts and evidence, and yet she found herself trapped in a life that was nothing more than a carefully curated illusion. When she discovered that her husband, Dave, had been leading a double life, an affair, a secret child, the foundation of her reality did not just crack, it shattered. You have to be kidding me. A man thinks he can hide a second family like he is hiding a spare key. Under a mat? That is not just arrogance. That is a fundamental misunderstanding of the person you are sharing a bed with. She had a plan. She was going to leave. She had everything lined up, a rental house, a future where she could finally breathe, and then, in the blink of an eye, that path was cut off. The incident in April of 2013, where she was held against her will, is the moment the narrative shifts from domestic discord to something far more sinister. She was terrified. She was calling for help, recording the very evidence that should have been her salvation. And yet, the gears of justice ground to a halt. Insufficient evidence. I have seen that phrase on too many files to count, and it always tastes like ash in your mouth. When a woman tells you she is afraid for her life, you listen. If you do not, you are failing the person who needs you most. And then there is the silence. The eerie, suffocating silence of a neighborhood where people are too afraid to speak. They saw the white vehicle. They saw the man who refused to be named. They kept their little notebooks, their crime folders as they called them, while the authorities seemingly looked the other way. It is a tragedy when citizens have to do the work of the badge because the badge has decided to close the book. You start to wonder about the men she was seeing. Will the trainer and the others, was she looking for an escape? Was she looking for the kindness she could not find at home? It does not matter. Nobody deserves to be found the way she was found. The autopsy, the toxicology, the medical examiner who had his own moral compass pointed toward the ground. It is a recipe for an investigation that dies before it can even begin. Foaming at the mouth, undetermined cause of death. A history of a heart attack that the heart itself does not seem to remember. It does not add up. If you're going to solve a murder, You have to be able to trust the ink on the page. When the experts fail, the truth becomes a ghost, haunting the hallways of a system that is supposed to provide answers. Laura was a mother, a doctor, a friend. She was a woman who, according to those who knew her, played a vibrant, essential role in the lives of everyone she touched. She deserved better than a file marked inactive. She deserved a voice that would not be silenced by red tape or the fear of a man who seemed to cast a long, dark shadow over everyone around him. I have walked through many crime scenes in my life, and the ones that stay with me are not the ones with the most blood. They are the ones where the truth is just out of reach, buried under layers of incompetence and indifference. You look at Laura, and you see a life cut short, a potential extinguished, and a question that still hangs in the air 12 years later, waiting for someone with the courage to finally answer it. Human beings are strange creatures. They commit the most heinous acts for the most trivial reasons imaginable, and yet they always believe they have left a perfect crime behind them. They are wrong. Every crime leaves a scar, and if you look closely enough, you will find the truth bleeding out from beneath the silence. My name is Joe Kenda. Let us talk about Stephanie Casper. It was the summer of 1969. A young woman, just 18 years old, full of life, full of hope, stepped out of a restaurant in Milwaukee and simply vanished into the night. It is a story as old as time, a story that breaks your heart because it is so utterly unnecessary. Stephanie was not a rebel. She was not running from the law. She was a waitress, a daughter, a sister. She was a human being who deserved to grow old. But instead, she became a pile of broken pieces scattered along the banks of the Root River in Racine County. You have to be kidding me. You look at a life like that, a life snuffed out because someone decided they had the right to play God, and it makes you sick to your stomach. When the investigators found those remains, they were not looking at a crime of passion. They were looking at a signature. The dismemberment was precise, almost surgical. This was not the work of a panicked amateur. This was the work of someone with time, someone with a cold, calculated patience. They found her in brown paper, in newspaper, buried in mud. They found a leather shoe, burned matches, a discarded military-style jacket. Every piece of that scene was a message from a coward who thought he was a genius. My. The arrogance of these people never ceases to amaze me. They think they are smarter than the law. They think they are smarter than God. But nature has a way of revealing what men try to hide. The investigation was a circus of failures. You had a boyfriend, John, who was guilty of nothing more than being a young man in love in a time that was not ready for him. You had a father, Charles, whose flippant, chilling remark to detectives that if he had killed his daughter, they would never found her, left a stain that never quite washed away. You had the restaurant, Mark's Big Boy, a place that should have been nothing more than a pit stop for a teenager, but instead became a nexus of dark rumors, drunken managers, and shifting stories. People lying to protect their sons. People lying to protect themselves. People simply lying because the truth was too heavy to carry. It is a miserable thing to watch a family tear itself apart over the shadow of a monster. I have spent my life looking into the eyes of killers. Some of them scream, some of them cry, but the ones you really have to watch out for are the ones who sit there and tell you their version of the world, a version where they are the victims. They talk about Hawaii. They talk about vacations. They talk about back doors and front doors, desperate to lead you away from the truth. They are masters of the pathetic, small-minded deceit. Michael Bartelt, for instance, he told stories of Hawaii, of plans, of innocence, but his own family knew better. His own sister knew what he was capable of. A man who abuses his own blood is a man who has lost his humanity long before he ever takes a life. Decades pass. The trail goes cold. Evidence sits in storage, aging, degrading, just like the memories of those who love Stephanie. But justice is a patient hunter. It does not sleep. It does not forget. We have advancements in science now. DNA that can pull a name out of the ether, But even with all the technology in the world, the heart of the matter remains the same. It is about a girl who did not come home. It is about parents who spent the rest of their lives wondering who took their daughter from them. It is about the ripple effect of evil. I tell you, there is no such thing as a closed case until the truth is laid bare. And even then, the tragedy remains. Stephanie deserved so much more than a discarded box on a farm. She deserved a life. She did not get one. And that, more than anything, is the weight we all carry. My. You see, the thing about human beings is that they are walking, talking bundles of secrets. Most people keep their secrets in a locked drawer, but some people, they keep them in their own skin until the pressure becomes too much, and they simply evaporate. I have spent the better part of a career staring into the hollowed-out lives of people who thought they were smarter than the evidence. You look at a house like the one in Taos County, and you expect to see the truth sitting right there on the mantelpiece, waiting for you to pick it up. But in the case of Melissa Casillas, the truth didn't just walk out the door. It seems to have deleted its own footprint. Let's look at this with a cold eye. You have a woman, a mother, someone who is supposed to be the anchor of that house. She has a daughter, Sierra, who clearly dotes on her, and a husband, Mark, who thinks he knows the geometry of his own marriage. But then, everything falls apart in a span of mere hours. You find the house locked. You find the phones, wiped clean, factory settings, a digital lobotomy. People do not wipe their lives clean because they are planning a casual stroll. You do that because you are terrified of what someone might find, or because you're being told that your old identity is a liability. I tell you, the inconsistencies in this story are enough to make a seasoned investigator's head spin. The husband, Mark, he is a hunter, a man who knows how to read the tracks in the mud. He claims he was at work. He claims he was blindsided. Yet the boots tell a different story. Fresh mud, no webs, right there in the bedroom. Then you have the blood, a drop of red on the floor, and suddenly everyone is an expert. Mark gets agitated. He stops talking. He wants a lawyer. Can you blame him? Or is that the classic dance of a man who knows that even a small drop of truth can drown him? And then there is the other side, the Mondragons, the parents, the sister, the niece. They look at Mark and they see a villain. They look at the evidence and they see a burial, not a departure. They are convinced that Melissa was a victim, that she was controlled, abused, and finally discarded. It is a tragedy played out in two different theaters with two different scripts. You have to be kidding me with the sightings. A blue truck, a woman stumbling on the highway. Then the video appears Melissa upright, walking with a backpack. It is the kind of detail that makes you want to throw your notes against the wall. If she walked away, why? Was it the debt? The feeling that the walls were closing in? Or was she, as some whispers suggest, just another cog caught in a machine larger than any of us can comprehend? The scientists, the missing people, the hush-hush nature of the work at Los Alamos. It sounds like a ghost story, but in my experience, the scariest stories are the ones that have just enough truth in them to be plausible. Think about the psychology of it. If Melissa chose to vanish, she had to be a master of deceit, hiding her tracks while looking her daughter in the eye and handing her a sandwich. That takes a kind of cold, calculating desperation that most mothers, most people, simply do not possess. But if she was forced, then someone out there is very, very good at making people disappear without leaving a single smear of blood or stray hair. I have seen people walk away from their lives before. They leave their keys, their IDs, their old self behind like a snakeskin. But they rarely do it with such clinical efficiency. They leave a trail. Melissa left a void. And the saddest part of it all? The daughter. Poor Sierra is left holding the bag of a life she no longer recognizes. Caught between the loyalty she owes her father and the aching, hollow truth that her mother is gone. People ask me, Kenda, what is the answer? And I have to tell them, the answer is usually buried in the things people choose not to say. The factory reset phones are not a sign of a new beginning. They are a sign of a final goodbye. Whether that goodbye was forced by a hand in the dark or by the crushing weight of life that had become too heavy to carry, we may never know. But this much I do know: the truth does not evaporate. It just waits for someone to stop looking at the distractions and start looking at the gaps. In this case, it is nothing but gaps. I have laid out the facts as they stand, cold and hard. It is a story that defies the simple explanations of a domestic dispute. What are your thoughts on the significance of those wiped phones? Do you believe it was an act of personal liberation, or the calculated erasure of a woman who knew she was being watched? Human beings are strange creatures. They commit the most heinous acts for the most trivial, pathetic reasons you could ever imagine. They build lives, they build relationships, and then in a heartbeat, they tear it all down, leaving nothing behind but a void and a room full of questions that never quite get answered. You sit there looking at a crime scene and you wonder what was going through their mind. What, in the name of God, could justify ending a 19-year-old girl's life? My. The story of Brittany McGlone is one that sits heavy in your gut. It is a classic tale of a small town where everyone thinks they know everyone else. But the truth is usually buried under layers of gossip and polite silence. Winnsboro, Texas, a place where you keep your doors unlocked and your eyes open, yet a monster managed to walk right in. I tell you, when I hear about a young woman found in her boyfriend's bed, bludgeoned to death, my mind immediately turns to the intimate details. This was not a robbery. Nothing was stolen. This was personal. Someone knew exactly where she would be. Someone knew her routine, or in this case, her broken routine. Brittany did not belong in that house on that specific morning. She worked an overnight shift at a distribution center, then a second job at a discount store, saving every penny for nursing school. She was exhausted. She was hopeful. And the one time she decides to break her habit, the one time she decides to find a moment of peace in her boyfriend's home, she walks into a trap. The scene speaks volumes. Even when the people inside refused to, the bathroom shower had been used. Someone took their time. They had the cold, calculating composure to wash away the sins of their act while Brittany lay cooling in the next room. That is not an impulse crime, friends. That is the behavior of someone who feels entirely at home. Someone who does not fear being discovered in that moment. And then we look at the suspects. You have the boyfriend, Jeff. He is a young man, seemingly distraught, surrounded by a family that quickly becomes an alibi machine. A road trip to pick up a grandmother. A convenient, timed-out alibi that checks out on paper, but leaves you with that itching sensation at the back of your neck. Did they really do it, or were they just part of stage-managed production? You look at the boyfriend, then you look at the grandfather, a man with a dark secret, a man who had been abusing this girl for years. You think to yourself, how many predators can one life intersect with? The grandfather, James, had every reason to want her silenced, yet the clock says he was at work. It is maddening. You have motive, you have opportunity, and yet the evidence refuses to line up with the narrative. Then comes a man who was in the shadows the whole time, Chad Carr, a name that barely registers, a man who had no business being in that inner circle, yet possessed the very weapon, a jackhandle, that fits the profile of the trauma Brittany suffered. You look at his history. A violent assault on a woman years earlier, the same M.O., the same cold-blooded brutality. And what is his explanation? A series of convoluted, pathetic excuses about being in the area to help someone he cannot even name. You have to be kidding me. You analyze the human capacity for cruelty, and you realize it is infinite. Chad Carr, with his nervous fidgeting, his shifting stories, his failure of a polygraph, and the eerie observation by his own girlfriend that he smelled a body wash that did not belong to him after she had been told he had not showered. The pieces of the puzzle are there, scattered across the table, yet the justice system, in all its wisdom, fails to put them together. A grand jury returns a no bill, and the case sits in the dark. It is a tragedy of errors, a tragedy of misconnections, and a lack of resolve from those who should have been the most aggressive in their pursuit. The family remains on the outside, looking in at a closed circle of silence. You sit there, you reflect, and you realize that evil does not always come with horns. Sometimes it comes in the form of a man you barely know, a man who walks among you, cleaning himself up in your bathroom, while your life ebbs away on a bed that was supposed to be a place of comfort. The case of Brittany McGlone is a reminder that in this world, silence is the greatest weapon, and the truth, while it may be hidden, never truly sleeps. It just waits for someone to look hard enough. Human beings are strange creatures. They leave this world for the most mundane, frustrating, and senseless reasons you could ever imagine. My. You see a body in a loading dock. You see a life cut short, and you want to look away because it is easier to label it a tragedy of choice than a crime of opportunity. I have spent my life walking into rooms where the air is thick with secrets, and let me tell you, when the authorities decide they have seen enough before they have even started, you have to wonder who is truly blind. The case of Spencer Irwin is a jagged little pill. It leaves a bitter taste in my mouth. Here is a 30-year-old man, found naked and discarded like yesterday's news in Fresno. The police, they look at the scene, the dirt, the lack of struggle, the lack of footprints, and they check a box. They mark it as a drug overdose. They see a young man who fought the demons of alcohol, and they decide his history is his obituary. You have to be kidding me. That is not police work. That is lazy, bureaucratic convenience. They call it natural causes. But nature does not leave a man naked in a loading dock in the middle of summer without a damn good reason. Spencer was a man who, despite his own internal battles, had a heart that still functioned for others. He was a beacon for the downtrodden, a guy who would hand over his own bread to a stranger in a park. And then, when he needed the system to treat him with the same dignity he afforded the nameless faces on the street, the system failed him. My. The coroner's report comes back with levels of drugs that would not kill a fly, and yet the narrative of the overdose persists. They incinerated the evidence, literally, before a real autopsy could be performed. They took his body and they turned it into ash, and with that, they erased the possibility of ever knowing for sure. Look at the facts. They found him in a place he had no business being. They found a car, a white Kia, pulling in and out of that perimeter with the lights off, lurking in the dark like a predator. They found a man named Angel, who was supposed to be a friend, sitting in Spencer's apartment, lying through his teeth to the landlord, while Spencer's body was likely already cooling in the dirt. And the police? They saw it, they ignored it, and they called it a day. I tell you, incompetence is often indistinguishable from malice. Spencer's mother, Kelly, she is the only person in the sorry saga who acted like a human being with a pulse. She did the legwork. She hunted for cameras. She mapped out the routes. She did what the badge-wearing professionals refused to do. She looked at the photos, those high-quality, cold, hard images, and she saw what the investigators refused to see, a line under the chin, a mark that screamed for a forensic pathologist who isn't trying to close a file by 5 o'clock. When you see a man found in such a way, you look for the human element. Was he scared? Was he betrayed? You think about his last moments. He was a man who wanted to get better, who had a bag packed, who had a plan to go to rehab. He was not a man looking to end his life in a pile of refuse. He was a man looking to start a new chapter, and someone, somewhere, decided to slam that book shut. Whether it was the man with the stolen laptop or the ghost in the white car, the truth is buried under layers of official negligence. I have stood over enough bodies to know that every victim has a story, and most of them end because someone else decided they were expendable. Spencer Irwin was not expendable. He was a son, he was a friend, and he deserved better than a lazy conclusion and a cold close file. The tragedy here is not just that he died. It is that those who swore to protect the truth turned their backs on it the second it became inconvenient. It makes me sick, I tell you. It truly does. People think they can hide behind procedures and titles, but eventually, the truth has a way of scratching at the door, and sooner or later, that door is going to get kicked wide open. Human beings are strange creatures. They commit the most heinous acts for the most trivial reasons imaginable. They treat life like a disposable commodity, something to be discarded when it no longer suits their selfish, twisted agendas. My. You sit there and you look at the evidence, and you have to ask yourself, how did we get here? How does a young man, full of potential, end up as a ghost in the wind because some small-time cowards couldn't keep their story straight? I tell you, it is enough to make you sick. Let us look at Christopher Cole Thomas, a young man, barely 22. He was not looking for trouble. He was looking for a paycheck. He was a bright kid, a salutatorian, someone who had seen the inside of a university and understood the value of hard work. He was in transition, caught between the burnout of youth and the promise of adulthood. He fell in with the wrong crowd, not because he was a criminal, but because he was naive. He trusted people who were not worthy of being called acquaintances, let alone friends. Then you have Julian Valles Jr. and Jeremy Carpenter. These two are the definition of pathetic. When the truth is staring them in the face, they retreat into a labyrinth of lies. They claim Cole just bolted, that he had some sort of breakdown, and vanished into the night. You have to be kidding me. If you have nothing to hide, you tell the truth. When you start spinning tales about mental health struggles and sudden, inexplicable flights into the dark, you are not protecting yourselves. You are revealing your guilt. They were not in North Carolina for Thanksgiving dinner. They were there to facilitate a poison trade. They went to meet Rudolfo de Leon Jr. and Anthony James Jr., men who traffic in destruction. This was not a social call. This was a transaction involving methamphetamines. When you play with fire, eventually you get burned. But the tragedy here is that Cole was the one who had to suffer for their reckless, bottom-feeding greed. The inner lives of these men are dark, hollow places for the perpetrators. Life is a series of calculated risks where human collateral is simply the cost of doing business. They lack the capacity for remorse because they lack the capacity for empathy. They looked at a human life and saw a liability. On the other hand, look at Cole. He was an observer. He likely realized, perhaps through his knowledge of a second language, that the conversation around him had shifted from business to something far more sinister. Fear is a rational response to an irrational situation. He saw the shift in the atmosphere. He saw the predatory nature of the men he was with. The surveillance footage does not lie. It shows them a quiet, eerie parade through the night, with Jeremy walking just behind him, a shepherd leading a lamb to the slaughter, or perhaps a jailer keeping his prisoner in sight. The stories they told, the prayers, the frantic search, the diabetic need for a soda, are the desperate, transparent fabrications of men who know the walls are closing in. They did not lose him. They were in the process of ensuring he remained lost. The parents, Chris and Kathy, they represent the absolute best of humanity. They are the ones who truly understand the weight of loss. They turned their grief into a relentless, burning pursuit of the truth. They did not wait for the system to move at its own glacial pace. They went out and hunted for their own son. They put themselves in harm's way, engaging with individuals who would sell their own souls for a gram of product. That takes a kind of courage that the people involved in this crime could never comprehend. We have phone data that maps the movements of their souls, or what is left of them. The phones moved together long after the supposed disappearance. They were tethered to this mystery by their own digital trails. They attempted to access his phone, a pathetic gesture of a desperate mind, likely trying to wipe away the evidence of their involvement. They are cowards, every single one of them. They hide behind silence, hoping that time will act as a shroud to cover their sins. But time has a way of stripping away the lies. Someone knows where Christopher Cole Thomas is. Someone knows exactly how a young man's future was snuffed out in a moment of frantic, drug-fueled chaos. To those individuals, you may think you are safe in your silence, but you are merely waiting for the inevitable. The truth is not a thing that disappears just because you refuse to speak it. It remains buried in the dark, waiting for the day it is finally unearthed. And when that day comes, I promise you, there will be no place left to hide. My. The truth has a funny way of making itself heard, whether you want it to or not. People are strange creatures. They chase dreams, they hide from demons, and sometimes they drive headlong into the darkness, looking for a fresh start, only to find the end of the road. I have seen a lot of things in my time, but this case is a puzzle with missing pieces that will never be found. My. You have to be kidding me. A family, a mountain, and a silence that has lasted for years. Let us look at the facts, the hard, cold, unvarnished truth. Bobby, Sherilyn, and their 6-year-old daughter, Madison, were a family in crisis. They were drowning in debt, suffocating under the weight of addiction, and according to those around them, they were battling spirits that existed only in their own minds. You read that letter from Sherilyn to her husband, the one found in that truck. It is not just a letter. It is a scream into the void. She called him a monster. She spoke of attempted murder, of being beaten, of a heart hardened by poison. When you see a document like that, as an investigator, your blood runs cold. It suggests a domestic situation that had reached the boiling point, a powder keg waiting for a spark. But then you have the absurdity of the scene. A truck left on a desolate mountain road, locked, with the keys still in the ignition. An emaciated dog trapped inside, clinging to life. And $32,000 in cash, cold hard cash, stashed under the seat. If this was a robbery, the perpetrator left a fortune behind. If this was a murder-suicide, why leave the child's most beloved companion to starve in the dark? It defies every logical pattern of human behavior. You have to be kidding me. A family does not just vanish into thin air, leaving their life savings behind, unless the truth is something far more chilling than a simple domestic tragedy. I have spent decades looking into the eyes of killers. Some are cold, some are calculated, and some are just plain broken. But this feels like a ghost story, yet it ended in the discovery of skeletal remains, scattered like autumn leaves in the brush, miles from where they were last seen. 2.6 miles, they say, to move a body, let alone 3, across that rugged, unforgiving terrain, requires intent. It requires strength. And it requires someone who knows a mountain better than the palm of their hand. You look at the players. The father, Bob, who was dying and infirm. The former boarder, Kenneth, who had a motive but a solid alibi. And then there is Dan, the neighbor on the mountain, a man who allegedly had a past involving a life taken, a man who, by his own admission, was the last person to speak to them. And yet, there are gaps in his timeline that you could drive a truck through. I tell you, when the stories do not align, when the clocks do not match, you are looking at a cover-up. The human heart is a dark forest. Sometimes people are pushed into that forest by their own demons, by the pills, by the paranoia, and by the belief that the world is ending. But usually, the monster is not a spirit or a demon from a book. The monster is a person. Someone who saw a family with a pocket full of dreams and a bag full of cash and decided their time was up. It is a tragedy that reeks of missed opportunities for justice. The file is closed, stamped as undetermined, but the truth is still out there, buried in the mud and the shadows of that mountain. And it is waiting for someone with the guts to dig it up. Human beings are curious creatures. They kill for the most pathetic reasons imaginable, some for greed, some for passion, and others, the ones that truly keep you awake at night, simply because they want to feel like a god for 5 minutes. You think you know people, you think you can spot the devil in the details, and then you stumble upon a case that reminds you that evil is often just a neighbor who asks too many questions. My. I tell you, you have to be kidding me when I hear about a monster like David Meyerhofer. He was not a ghost. He was a man living in the light, a carpenter, a former Boy Scout, a man who built things while his mind was busy calculating how to tear others apart. In June of 1973, The Montana mountains were supposed to be a place of wonder for the Yeager family. Instead, they became a theater of nightmare. 12-year-old Heidi wakes up to a breeze in a tent that should have been sealed tight. She reaches out for her little sister, Susie, and finds nothing but cold mountain air and a jagged slice in the fabric. The silence of that morning is heavier than a tombstone. When you investigate a disappearance, you look for the cracks in the world. You look for the moment logic abandons the victim. Marietta Yeager, a mother who would eventually become the strongest investigative force in this case, knew immediately. She saw the stuffed animals left outside like breadcrumbs leading into a dark forest. You have to be kidding me if you think a 7-year-old child wanders off into a pitch-black wilderness, leaving her comfort object behind. Someone took her. The investigation was a masterclass in frustration. You have the Gallatin County Sheriff and the Federal Bureau of Investigation stumbling over their own feet, dealing with a case where they had no body, no weapon, and a predator who was far more patient than they were. And then the audacity, the man starts calling. He plays with the family, like a cat with a broken bird. He dangles the truth about Susie's humped fingernails, a detail so small, so intimate, that it proved he had been close enough to touch her, close enough to know the secrets of her very body. You have to understand the psychology here. This man, Meyerhofer, was a classic narcissist. He did not just want to kill, he wanted to be the center of the orbit. He inserted himself into the investigation, offering up clues like the red blouse he just happened to find, hoping the police would see him as the helpful citizen rather than the shadow in the brush. It is a common mistake for such men. They think they're the smartest person in the room, and usually they are surrounded by people who are tired, desperate, and not looking for the truth in the right places. When they found the remains of that abandoned ranch, the truth came out like a flood. They found the remnants of Susie, and they found Sandy Dickman, and they realized they were dealing with a man who collected lives like trophies. The profile developed at Quantico was accurate. White, in his 20s, a loner with military training. It is chilling when the science finally catches up to reality. But then, the cowardice. After he confesses to taking those innocent souls. After he admits to the murder of Michael Rainey and the boy Bernie Pullman, he decides he has had enough. He does not face the music. He does not stand in a courtroom and look those parents in the eye. He checks out early. He kills himself in his cell, leaving behind a silence that is just as hollow as the one he created that night in the tent. I tell you, there is no peace in such conclusion. You want a trial, you want a verdict, you want to see justice served in a way that is loud and final. But sometimes, evil just quietly exits the room, leaving the rest of us to sweep up the shards of the lives he destroyed. Marietta Yeager chose forgiveness. That is a strength I cannot comprehend, but I admire it. As for me, I look at the mountains, and I think about the darkness that can hide in the hearts of men who look exactly like us. It is enough to make a man quit, but we never do. We keep digging. We keep looking for the truth until there is nothing left to find, working hard at the office, and returning home to her quiet neighborhood. But the lack of evidence only fueled Marlene's grand imagination. The situation reached a peculiar peak in 2011 during a routine Friday lunch. Shirley and her co-workers were enjoying a pleasant meal at a local restaurant. Suddenly, Marlene appeared, disguised rather theatrically in dark clothing and a hat, attempting to hide behind menu. The waitress, entirely unimpressed by the espionage, promptly alerted the Tuscarora group. A dramatic, albeit short-lived, scuffle ensued in the parking lot. Shirley's friends quickly formed a protective circle around her. It was a shocking interruption to a lovely afternoon, driven entirely by misplaced jealousy. True to her gentle nature, Shirley chose not to escalate the situation to the courts, hoping that a simple restraining order would encourage Marlene to find peace and move on. Shirley simply wanted to focus on her upcoming wedding to Chuck and the joyful life ahead of her. Chapter 4, A Quiet Morning. July 23rd, 2013, dawned as an otherwise calm and beautiful Tuesday morning in Kannapolis. Chuck Reeves was preparing for a brief work trip, a routine part of his life as a traveling salesman. The evening prior, around 8:15, he had been chatting happily on the phone with Shirley. She had agreed to dog sit for him while he was away. In the middle of their pleasant conversation, the line had suddenly gone dead. Given the notoriously spotty telephone service in her neighborhood, Chuck had simply chuckled to himself, assuming the signal had dropped, and went to sleep with a full heart. The following morning at 9:40, Chuck arrived at Shirley's house to drop off his dog before hitting the road. The neighborhood was bathed in warm morning light. However, as he approached the house, a subtle sense of unease washed over him. The garage door was open, but the main door was locked. It was unusual, but not alarming enough to cause immediate panic. Chuck retrieved a spare key from a familiar flower bed near the doorway and let himself inside. The house was incredibly quiet, save for the sound of water running in the bathroom. A profound stillness hung in the air. As Chuck walked through the beautifully kept home, he found his beloved Shirley. She had passed away. The reality of the moment was earth-shattering. The vibrant, loving woman who had spent her life caring for others was gone. Chuck, devastated and heartbroken, immediately called the authorities, hoping against hope that this was all a terrible dream. When the Rowan County investigators arrived, they treated the home with the utmost respect. The scene was strange, bearing the marks of someone who had tried very hard to clean up and hide their presence. But the detectives knew that the truth always leaves a trace, no matter how much bleach is poured on the floor. Chapter 5, The Light of Truth. The investigation began with careful, methodical steps. Detectives first spoke with Chuck. His heartbreak was palpable, his demeanor completely devastated. Yet, he was incredibly cooperative and articulate. The police quickly verified his alibi with his employer in South Carolina and noted that he bore no signs of having been involved in any physical altercation. Chuck was cleared, leaving him to mourn the future he had so eagerly anticipated. Next, the detective spoke with Shirley's grieving daughter, Tracy. Tracy mentioned a troubled relationship her mother had endured over a decade ago with a man named Richard. The detectives tracked Richard down at a local pawn shop. He was shocked by the sad news but was physically incapable of having been involved, and his alibi checked out completely. The turning point came from an unexpected source. Irvin Johnson, heavily burdened by the erratic behavior of his wife, contacted the police. He shared the long, sad history of Marlene's obsession with Shirley. When investigators located Marlene at her attorney's office, she was perfectly groomed, her demeanor cool and detached, but the evidence spoke louder than her silence. The authorities discovered that Marlene had recently spent time with a friend named Tim Connor, who initially tried to provide her with a false alibi. Under the gentle but firm questioning of the detectives, Tim realized the gravity of the situation and admitted he had not been entirely honest. He had not spent the night with Marlene. With the false alibi dismantled, the state crime laboratory worked diligently to uncover the final piece of the puzzle. They found the undeniable proof they needed, respectfully piecing together the events of that fateful night. Marlene was arrested, and in January of 2018, a jury brought swift and decisive justice to the courtroom. Though the trial could not bring Shirley back, it provided a profound sense of closure for her family and friends. The community of Kannapolis rallied around Tracy, the beloved grandson, and Chuck. They chose not to remember the tragedy, but rather to celebrate the incredible light Shirley had brought into the world. They remember her warm smile, her infectious laughter, and her enduring legacy of charity and kindness. Shirley Pierce had lived a life full of love, and that love would echo in the hearts of Kannapolis forever. Part 2, The Echoes of Prescott. Chapter 6, The Bright Smile of Autumn. Thousands of miles away, under the vast, open skies of Arizona, the Prescott National Forest offered a sanctuary of natural beauty. It was a place where residents of Prescott spent their days riding dirt bikes along dusty trails and enjoying the expansive, rugged landscapes. The town of Prescott itself was a tight-knit community, where the youth gathered to celebrate life under the starlit skies. In the late summer of 1988, the brightest star in Prescott was a 19-year-old girl named Pamela Pitts. Pam was a force of nature, a wonderful, vibrant spirit who was always on the move, always looking for the next adventure, and always making sure everyone around her was having a fantastic time. She possessed a rare gift of being able to strike up a friendship with absolutely anyone she met. As the oldest of 4 siblings, Pam was deeply devoted to her family. To her father, Paul, she was a sidekick and a source of endless pride. To her younger siblings, she was a mentor, a protector, and a confidant. She was the kind of big sister who would guide you through life's little challenges with a reassuring smile and a profound sense of loyalty. By the time she turned 19, Pam was eager to spread her wings. She had an artistic soul and frequently spoke of attending beauty college or venturing into fashion design to gain a little independence. She took a job at a local restaurant and decided it was time to move out of her family home. She found a roommate in an 18-year-old girl named Shelley Norgard. Shelley was a mystery to many. She was socially awkward and carried the heavy emotional baggage of a difficult family background. For Shelley, living with the popular and universally loved Pam was a chance to finally experience a sense of belonging. At first, the arrangement seemed like a wonderful step forward for both young women. Chapter 7 Shadows and Roommates. As the summer transitioned into autumn, the realities of independent living began to test the girls' friendship. The responsibilities of rent and bills created a quiet tension in their shared apartment. Pam, noticing that the financial burden was becoming uneven, approached her father. She expressed her desire to move back home, missing the comfort and reliability of her family. Paul, ever the supportive father, welcomed the idea with open arms. Shelley, however, struggled deeply with the prospect of losing her roommate. She had formed an intense attachment to Pam, viewing their living arrangement as her only stable sanctuary. The thought of Pam leaving stirred a deep well of anger and fear of abandonment within her. Around this time, Pam experienced a joyful reunion. She reconnected with an old flame, a kind young man named Bobby Kitchener. Their romance was rekindling slowly and sweetly. Pam was reinvigorated, spending her evenings downtown with Bobby, hanging out in the courthouse parking lot, talking with friends, and watching the world cruise by. Her life was a beautiful mosaic of friends, family, and youthful joy. But on September 16, 1988, the mosaic was abruptly shattered. Pam failed to return home. When she missed work the following Monday, her father knew immediately that something was terribly wrong. His daughter was simply not the kind of person to vanish without a trace. He contacted the Prescott Police Department, initiating a search that would span across decades. Chapter 8: The Long Search. 13 days later, the search came to a heartbreaking conclusion. On the evening of September 29th, a citizen exploring the Prescott National Forest made a deeply unsettling discovery near a popular local gathering spot known as the Pit. The authorities were immediately called to the scene. With profound sadness, the Yavapai County Sheriff's Office confirmed that Pamela Pitts had been found. She had been taken from the world in a quiet, isolated place. Her passing a tragic loss that sent shockwaves through the peaceful town. The detectives, dedicated to finding answers for Pam's grieving family, began their work with solemn determination. The initial investigation naturally turned to those closest to Pam. They spoke with her boyfriend, Bobby, who had a solid, verifiable alibi for the evening she went missing. They spoke with her roommate, Shelley. Shelley's behavior was defensive, and her stories about her whereabouts that night were inconsistent. Friends reported that Shelley had been visibly angry with Pam on the night of the 16th, expressing deep frustration and misplaced blame. Despite the suspicious behavior, the investigators lacked the definitive evidence needed to move forward, without the scientific tools that would become available in later decades. The case relied on witness testimonies and circumstantial clues. Over time, the rumor mill of the small town churned out wild stories of cults and secret fights, creating a maze of false leads that frustrated the police and prolonged the family's agony. Years turned into decades, and the case of the bright, smiling girl grew cold, but it was never forgotten. Chapter 9: The Wheels of Justice. The universe has a remarkable way of balancing the scales, even if it takes years to do so. In the spring of 1991, another tragedy struck the community, one that would eventually cast a revealing light on the shadows of the past. Ray Clerks, a responsible 24-year-old man with dreams of becoming a commercial airline pilot, was reported missing. He had failed to show up for a family wedding in California, an act entirely out of character for the reliable young man. When his body was eventually discovered in a distant location, the investigators noted a chilling commonality. At the time of his disappearance, Ray had been trying to end a relationship and move away. His girlfriend at the time was none other than Shelley Norgard. The evidence in Ray's case was clear and undeniable. Confronted with the truth, Shelley ultimately accepted a plea deal, confessing to her actions and receiving a 20-year sentence in the state prison. For Pam's family, the news brought a complex mix of relief and renewed frustration. They felt certain that Shelley held the answers to Pam's disappearance as well, but the law requires proof, and proof for a crime from 1988 was exceedingly hard to find. For 20 long years, Paul Pitts waited. He transformed his desire for immediate revenge into a steadfast, enduring quest for justice. He trusted that the truth could not stay hidden forever. Chapter 10: Restoring the Balance. In 2011, a cold case team reopened Pam's file. The detectives pored over the old records, reevaluating every statement and every piece of circumstantial evidence. They knew Shelley was nearing the end of her 20-year sentence and realized this might be their final opportunity to uncover the truth. The breakthrough came from an unexpected display of patience. Investigators carefully reviewed dozens of recorded telephone conversations Shelley had made from prison, buried within hours of mundane chatter. A detective with a keen ear caught a fleeting but monumental admission. During a conversation with a family member about the night Pam went missing, Shelley's guarded facade slipped just enough to provide the context the detectives desperately needed. On June 2nd, 2017, armed with the new evidence and decades of diligent police work, authorities arrested Shelley once more. The road to the courtroom was difficult, paved with the challenges of a 30-year-old mystery. Witnesses had moved on or passed away, and memories had naturally faded. To ensure that justice was served and to spare the family the uncertainty of a trial, prosecutors arranged an agreement. On March 1st, 2021, Shelley stood before a judge and finally admitted the truth. She confessed that a heated argument on that cool September night in 1988 had escalated into a fatal encounter. She had caused Pam's passing. Because of her previous 20 years served and the complexities of the legal agreement, Shelley was permitted to walk out of courthouse. It was a challenging reality for Pam's family to accept. Yet, amidst the complicated feelings, there was a profound sense of victory. The truth, hidden for over 3 decades, had finally been spoken into the light. Paul Pitts could finally rest knowing the world knew the truth about what had happened to his beautiful daughter. The community of Prescott chose not to dwell on the darkness of the crime, but to celebrate the vibrant, loving spirit of the 19-year-old girl who had loved her family so fiercely. Pamela Pitts was remembered not for how she left the world, but for the brilliant, joyful fireball of energy she had been while she was here. Her legacy became a testament to the enduring power of a family's love and the tireless pursuit of truth. With wedding bells on the horizon, life never looked better for the true Southern Belle of Rowan County, North Carolina. Nestled gently between Charlotte and Greensboro, the fast-growing city of Kannapolis was renowned for its beautiful textiles. But to those who lived there, it was simply a quiet, family-based community. Upper-middle-class homes stood proudly within eyeshot of each other, wrapped in the comforting embrace of tall oak trees and manicured lawns. It was a kind of neighborhood where everyone knew your name, where neighbors baked pies for one another, and where violent crime was something people only read about in mystery novels. At the center of this idyllic world was 62-year-old Shirley Pierce. Shirley was a ray of sunshine in a region already famous for its deep southern hospitality. Born and raised in the neighboring town of Mooresville, she was very close to her family, especially her sisters and her brother. She was so pleasant, so outgoing, and simply beautiful inside and out. Everyone loved Shirley. She was a very friendly woman, well-liked in her community as well as at her job, and people who knew her frequently remarked on her endless grace. In her early 20s, Shirley had married and welcomed a wonderful daughter named Tracy. Tracy was her only child, and Shirley simply adored her. When life brought changes and Shirley found herself single again in the early 1980s, she looked for a meaningful way to support her small family. She eventually signed on with the Tuscarora Yarn Factory. Tuscarora Yarns was a prominent textile company that crafted specialty yarns, and Shirley entered the accounting department before gracefully rising to become the administrative assistant to the chief executive officer. Shirley was a very dainty, flawlessly dressed, and eloquent lady. She brought a level of professionalism and warmth to the office that made every single day brighter. Her colleagues were not just co-workers. They were her dear friends. They spent their days working diligently, and they went to lunch almost every single day together. After hours, they would go shopping or share delightful dinners, laughing over bowls of warm soup and fresh bread. She worked long hours and poured her heart into the company. Anyone would have been overjoyed to have Shirley working with them. Whatever free time Shirley did have, she put to magnificent use. She possessed a very big heart, constantly organizing golf tournaments and grand gala dinners for several local charities. She was passionately involved in an organization that raised money for people who needed specialized medical care, speaking volumes about the kind and caring character she possessed. And when her daughter Tracy became a mother to a little boy, becoming a grandmother sent Shirley entirely over the moon. That little boy was the absolute apple of her eye. Anybody who knew Shirley would always hear joyous tales about her grandson and Tracy. By the year 2013, with her family thriving and her career flourishing, Shirley was looking to hit the absolute trifecta in her romantic life. When she began dating a charming textile salesman named Chuck Reeves, it appeared she had done just exactly that. Chuck was 59 years old and had known Shirley for quite a while through their mutual connections at Tuscarora Yarns. Their professional acquaintance soon blossomed into a beautiful dating relationship. Chuck and Shirley found love a little later in life, and it was a deeply grounding, joyful relationship. They got along perfectly. Chuck loved her dearly, and Shirley loved him with all her heart. The pair dated for 4.5 years, enjoying quiet evenings and joyous weekend trips, while maintaining their separate cozy residences. In the bright spring of 2013, Chuck asked Shirley to marry him, and she happily accepted. She had finally found the true love of her life, and she was bursting with happiness. They planned to live a long, beautiful, and peaceful life together. Chapter 2, The Great Bathtub Catastrophe. July 23rd, 2013, began like any other calm Tuesday morning in Kannapolis. Chuck had been traveling out of town for his job, a frequent occurrence in the life of a busy textile salesman. The night prior, around 8:15 in the evening, he had spoken to Shirley on the telephone. She had kindly offered to dog sit for him while he was away. They made sweet arrangements for the next day, planning to bring the dog by and share morning coffee. In the middle of their pleasant conversation, the phone connection suddenly dropped. Telephone service was notoriously spotty in that particular area, so Chuck thought nothing of it, simply smiling and going to sleep. The next morning at 9:40, Chuck arrived at Shirley's house. The neighborhood was quiet, filled with the gentle chirping of morning birds. However, when Chuck approached the house, he noticed something highly unusual. The garage door was left wide open, yet the front door was securely locked. Shirley was expecting him. She knew he was coming. Chuck felt a tiny flutter of confusion. He retrieved a spare key from a decorative vase hidden in the flower bed just to the left of the doorway and let himself inside. The house was completely silent, except for the sound of rushing water coming from the main bathroom. Chuck walked down the hallway, noticing a strange, pungent odor wafting through the air. It smelled remarkably like heavy bleach and synthetic floral perfume. When Chuck entered the main bedroom, he gasped. Across the pristine, cream-colored carpet were chaotic splashes of bright, vibrant crimson. The red stains continued across the floor, forming a bizarre, messy path leading directly into the bathroom. It appeared that someone had frantically attempted to clean up the crimson mess with strong bleach, which only succeeded in creating strange, swirling bleaching patterns on the carpet. Fearing the absolute worst, Chuck rushed into the bathroom. There, he was met with a scene that was equal parts shocking and utterly ridiculous. Laying in the bathtub, directly under the running water, was not Shirley, but Shirley's absolute favorite custom-designed vintage silk wedding gown. The dress was completely ruined, soaked in a disastrous mixture of cherry red fabric dye and harsh household bleach. The red dye had dripped from the bathroom counter, pooled on the floor, and splashed against the beautiful shower curtain. Chuck immediately turned off the running water and pulled the ruined, heavy fabric from the tub. He breathed a massive sigh of relief, realizing Shirley was nowhere to be seen and was perfectly safe. But he was absolutely baffled by the colorful disaster before him. Who would break into a house simply to passionately destroy a wedding dress? Wanting to document the bizarre vandalism, Chuck immediately called the local police department. Chapter 3 Whispers and Private Investigators. When the local officers arrived, they were led to the main bedroom. They carefully examined the strange red path and the ruined gown. It was clear this was not a random burglary. The house was not ransacked, no valuables were missing, and the television and computers were completely untouched. The sheer intensity of the dye splashing suggested this was a deeply personal, dramatic prank driven by intense jealousy. Detectives gently asked Chuck to sit down and talk with them. Chuck was devastated for Shirley's ruined dress, but he was very cooperative and articulate. He explained his deep love for Shirley and confirmed he had been out of town working in South Carolina the previous night. The officers examined Chuck's hands and clothing. He did not have a single drop of red dye on him, completely clearing him of the mischievous act. As the officers were wrapping up their chat with Chuck, Shirley herself arrived home, having just returned from a delightful morning stroll around the neighborhood with her grandson. She was completely shocked to see the police and absolutely heartbroken to find her beautiful wedding gown destroyed. Tracy, Shirley's daughter, hurried over to comfort her mother. When the detectives asked if anyone would hold such a petty grudge against Shirley, Tracy thought long and hard. She mentioned an old boyfriend from 10 years prior named Richard, who had been famously grumpy and dramatic. The detectives found Richard working at a nearby antique shop. However, Richard was an elderly, frail man who could barely walk, let alone sneak into a house to orchestrate a massive dye catastrophe. He cheerfully provided his alibi, and the detectives crossed him off the list. Hours into the unusual investigation, the detectives received a frantic, emotional phone call from one of Shirley's co-workers, Irvin Johnson, the chief financial officer at Tuscarora Yarns. Irvin was highly agitated and insisted he needed to speak with the authorities immediately. When detectives arrived at the beautiful Tuscarora Yarns office, Irvin sat them down and began to lay out the dramatic history of his marriage. Irvin was married to a woman named Marlene. Born into a wealthy restaurant family, Marlene was 61 years old, exceptionally glamorous, dressed in nines, and spoke very eloquently. However, Marlene was completely unused and not getting her own way. Irvin was a quiet, reserved man, while Marlene possessed an intimidating theatrical presence. For over 2 decades, they had a prosperous life, but around 2003, Marlene experienced what Irvin could only describe as a dramatic midlife awakening. She became intensely focused on Irvin's professional life, driven by a massive ego and wild, unfounded jealousy. She would target any unmarried woman at Irvin's workplace, spinning elaborate, fictional stories in her head that they were trying to steal her husband. When Irvin became the chief financial officer in 2006, Marlene's suspicions shifted entirely to the universally loved Shirley Pierce. When Irvin introduced his stylish wife to Shirley, Shirley had politely smiled, called him honey as a friendly Southern greeting, and gently patted his arm. According to Irvin, Marlene's dramatic antennas immediately shot straight up into the air. Marlene became completely fixated on Shirley. She even went so far as to hire private investigators to follow Shirley. The investigators, expecting a scandalous affair, were incredibly bored to discover that Shirley's daily routine consisted entirely of grocery shopping, attending charity board meetings, and playing with her grandson. One investigator quit, stating that Marlene's demands for aerial drone photographs of Shirley's beautiful garden were completely ridiculous and a waste of money. The less evidence Marlene found, the more theatrically unhinged she became. Shirley, knowing full well Marlene was occasionally spying on her, simply ignored the woman, assuming her pure innocence would eventually make Marlene lose interest. Irvin nervously recounted a legendary incident from 2011. Shirley and her co-workers were having their regular Friday lunch at a local cafe. Marlene arrived dressed entirely in black workout clothes, wearing a large comical hat, and tried to hide her identity behind a laminated dessert menu. The waitress immediately recognized her and warned the Tuscarora group. As Shirley walked across the parking lot after lunch, Marlene sprinted over like a gazelle, yelling dramatic accusations and attempting to splash Shirley with a cup of iced tea. Shirley gracefully dodged the tea, and Marlene ended up slipping and landing squarely in a decorative puddle. Shirley, being the kind soul she was, refused to press any charges, hoping the embarrassment would simply teach Marlene a lesson. Now, Irvin feared that Marlene had finally escalated her jealousy by breaking into Shirley's home to ruin her upcoming wedding. He informed the detectives that Marlene was likely hiding out with her eccentric friend, Tim Connor, an author and motivational speaker. Chapter for the Red Fingertips. The detectives quickly located Marlene's vehicle parked in downtown Salisbury. In the trunk of her luxury car, they found multiple empty bottles of cherry red fabric dye, 3 empty jugs of household bleach, and a pair of heavy-duty rubber cleaning gloves. Marlene was politely asked to visit the sheriff's department for questioning. She sat in the interview room, wearing large, dark sunglasses, acting completely bored and uninterested, sighing heavily whenever a question was asked. She adamantly denied having any involvement in the Great Bathtub Catastrophe. However, her impeccably manicured hands told a completely different story. The detective politely asked Marlene to remove her sunglasses and show her hands. Marlene hesitated, then extended her arms. She had recently gotten a very expensive French manicure, but the tips of her nails were deeply, unmistakably stained with bright cherry red dye. Furthermore, her knuckles smelled faintly of harsh bleach. The detectives then visited Tim Connor. Tim was cool and calm, explaining he was simply a friend who provided a listening ear for Marlene's dramatic complaints. Initially, Tim claimed Marlene had been with him the entire evening of the incident, helping him organize his extensive book collection. But when detectives informed Tim about the red dye found in Marlene's trunk and on her fingers, Tim's entire demeanor changed. He leaned back in his chair, looked up at the ceiling, and sighed loudly. He confessed he had not been totally honest. He admitted that Marlene had asked him to provide a false alibi over breakfast that morning. Tim, realizing the situation was far more serious than a simple argument, immediately retracted his previous statement. With her alibi dried up, the physical evidence of the dye, and the history of theatrical harassment, Marlene was officially charged with criminal mischief, trespassing, and the willful destruction of property. When the case went before the judge, Marlene maintained her innocence, looking very demure and professional. The defense attempted to argue that the dye could have come from a sudden passion for amateur tie-dye crafts. However, the judge was not amused. Marlene was found guilty. As the verdict was read, she let out an audible, dramatic gasp and theatrically slumped into her chair. The judge ordered her to fully reimburse Shirley for the absolute cost of the custom wedding gown, pay for professional cleaning of the carpets, and complete 500 hours of mandatory community service at a local charity center, hoping the hard work would teach her the value of humility and kindness. Shirley, possessing a heart full of forgiveness, felt a wave of relief. The town banded together, and a local seamstress worked day and night to craft a brand new, even more stunning wedding gown for Shirley. The wedding between Shirley and Chuck was the event of the year. The sun shone brightly, the flowers bloomed beautifully, and laughter echoed throughout the reception hall. Shirley's grandson danced happily on the dance floor, and the community celebrated a beautiful triumph of love and joy over bitter jealousy. Chapter 5A Fresh Start in Prescott. Far across the country, the Prescott National Forest provided the resident of Prescott, Arizona, with absolutely endless recreational activities. People loved riding their bicycles along the scenic trails, hiking up the beautiful mountains, and enjoying peaceful evening campfires under the vast, starry sky. In the late summer of 1988, 19-year-old Pam Pitts was a young woman known throughout the town for her bright smile and endless zest for life. Pam was a wonderful, spirited kid. She was always doing something creative, always wanted to have fun, and spread joy. She was the type of person who could effortlessly make friends with absolutely anybody she met. The oldest of 4 children, Pam loved nothing more than her sweet family. Her father, Paul, considered her his absolute favorite sidekick. She was an awesome mentor to her younger siblings, guiding them through life with patience and love. Her sister always said she could count on Pam for anything, confidently confiding her biggest dreams and silliest fears in her. By the age of 19, Pam was ready to spread her wings and leave the family nest. She decided to move into an apartment with a new friend she had met through mutual contacts, Shelley Norgard. Shelley was 18 years old and slightly awkward. Shelley's background was always a bit of a mystery to her friends. Her parents were rarely around, and she carried a lingering sadness from her parents' complicated divorce. Her father was known to be quite strict, and Shelley had made it very clear that she desperately did not want to move back into his home. Living with Pam was Shelley's chance to finally have a warm, sisterly connection. After moving in together during the sunny month of July, Pam secured a fun job at a lively local restaurant to help make ends meet. She possessed many creative interests, but was not quite sure what she wanted to do with her bright future. She often talked enthusiastically about attending beauty college. Spending hours meticulously drawing incredible fashion designs and complicated hairstyling ideas in a large, leather-bound portfolio she carried everywhere. She was incredibly artistic, and that portfolio contained all her dreams for the future. In August, Pam happily reconnected with an old, charming flame named Bobby Kitchener. They were taking their renewed romance slowly, enjoying casual strolls downtown and watching the colorful sunsets together. Pam's life really revolved around her wonderful friends, her supportive family, and building a bright, colorful future. But on the evening of September 16th, 1988, a strange and confusing mystery began to unfold in the quiet town of Prescott. Chapter 6, The Mystery of the Missing Portfolio. It started when Shelley called Pam's father, Paul. Shelley sounded nervous, asking if Paul knew where Pam was. She claimed Pam had taken off the night before and had not come home. At first, Paul was not too concerned. Pam was an independent young woman who occasionally spent the night at a friend's house. But when Pam failed to show up for her shift at the restaurant on Monday, Paul became deeply worried. Pam was incredibly responsible. She was not the kind of person to simply disappear without calling her family or her job. Paul contacted the Prescott Police Department to file a missing persons report. Shortly after, Paul made a confusing discovery. Pam's car was parked safely at the apartment, and her purse, containing her money and identification, was sitting neatly on her perfectly made bed. The only thing missing from the entire apartment was Pam herself and her precious leather-bound fashion portfolio. Shelley had conveniently failed to mention that all of Pam's belongings were still at the apartment. Paul's suspicions immediately focused on Shelley. He knew from recent conversations with Pam that the two roommates were having serious issues. Shelley was constantly late with her half of the rent, and her dramatic, emotionally demanding behavior was exhausting Pam. Pam had recently told her father she was ready to move back home, planning to gently break the news to Shelley over the weekend. Detectives sat down with Shelley on October 5th. Shelley painted a very different picture, claiming she and Pam were the best of friends, despite a minor disagreement over finances. When asked about her whereabouts on the night Pam vanished, Shelley claimed she had gone to a fast food restaurant with her boyfriend, Ray Clerks, to meet friends, and then spent the rest of the night driving around town until 3 a.m. The detectives checked with Ray to confirm the timeline. Ray, a responsible and quiet young man who dreamed of becoming a commercial pilot, seemed confused. He told the detectives that Shelley had actually gone home much earlier, around 11:30 in the evening. When the detectives pointed out the inconsistency, Ray simply shrugged, stating he was tired of the drama Shelley constantly brought into his life and preferred not to be involved. Detectives then spoke with the friends Shelley claimed to be with that night. The friends revealed a shocking piece of the puzzle. They stated that Shelley was incredibly angry that night, frantically looking everywhere for Pam. Shelley had dramatically complained to her friends, falsely claiming that Pam was responsible for everything wrong in her life, and declaring she was going to finally confront her roommate. The town of Prescott was suddenly buzzing with wild, theatrical rumors. Some teenagers whispered that a secret underground fashion club had stolen Pam away. Others claimed Pam had run off to join a traveling theater troupe. The gossip reached a fever pitch when a local hiker reported finding a pile of burned items at Gordo's Pit, a popular recreational spot in the Prescott National Forest. The police quickly investigated the fire pit. Inside the ashes, they found the scorched, melted remains of a leather binder and dozens of half-burned sketches of dresses and hairstyles. It was Pam's beloved portfolio. Chapter 7, The Truth in the Forest. The discovery of the burned portfolio sent shockwaves through Pam's family. Who could be so cruel as to destroy a young woman's hopes and dreams? Months passed, and the case of the missing portfolio and the missing teenager grew stale. Detectives followed every single rumor, interviewing dozens of teenagers, including a girl named Melinda Perry who had allegedly argued with Pam over a borrowed sweater, but all leads led to frustrating dead ends. Then, in a surprising twist 3 years later, Ray Clerks, Shelley's former boyfriend, also disappeared. Ray's family reported him missing after he failed to show up for a beautiful family wedding in California. Ray was highly responsible, and his sudden absence alarmed everyone. The detectives immediately recognized a pattern. 2 people who had decided to emotionally and physically distance themselves from the dramatic Shelley Norgard had suddenly vanished. When investigators confronted Shelley about Ray's disappearance, she broke down in tears. She confessed that Ray had recently broken up with her, stating he was moving to California to attend aviation school and pursue his dream of becoming a commercial airline pilot. He had chosen not to tell anyone his exact departure date to avoid a massive theatrical scene from Shelley. Shelley admitted she had hidden Ray's favorite travel bags out of spite, but insisted she had absolutely no idea where he actually was. As it turned out, a quick phone call to the flight academy in California confirmed that Ray was indeed safely enrolled, happily taking flying lessons, and simply avoiding telephone calls from his dramatic ex-girlfriend. With Ray located safely, the detectives turned their intense focus entirely back to Shelley regarding Pam's disappearance. In a beautifully unexpected turn of events, they received a phone call from a spiritual wellness retreat nestled deep in the mountains of northern Arizona. The caller was Pam. Pam was perfectly safe, healthy, and incredibly apologetic for the worry she had caused. Detectives and her overjoyed father rushed to the retreat to bring her home. Sitting in the comfortable, sunny office of the police station, Pam finally explained the entire mystery. On the night of September 16th, 1988, Pam had gently told Shelley she was moving back home. Shelley, terrified of abandonment and facing the prospect of returning to her strict father, flew into a massive, irrational rage. While Pam was visiting her boyfriend Bobby, Shelley had spitefully grabbed Pam's beloved fashion portfolio from the apartment. Driven by intense jealousy of Pam's talent and bright future, Shelley drove out to Gordo's pit in the forest and threw the beautiful sketches into a blazing campfire, watching the dreams turn into curling smoke. When Pam returned home and discovered her entire life's work destroyed, she was entirely devastated. Her heart was broken. Feeling lost, overwhelmed by the toxicity of her living situation, and unsure of her future without her portfolio, Pam had impulsively packed a small bag and boarded a bus to the mountain retreat. She needed time away from the drama, the noise, and the pressure of the town to rediscover her true passions and find inner peace. She had meant to call her father after a few days, but the peaceful isolation of the retreat had turned days into weeks, and she had lost track of time while healing her spirit. Chapter 8: Sunsets and New Beginnings. Faced with Pam's undeniable return and the truth laid bare, Shelley finally confessed to her destructive actions. She admitted she had taken the portfolio to Gordo's pit and burned it because she wanted Pam to feel as lost and empty as she felt. Shelley cried softly, apologizing for the pain and the absolute chaos she had caused out of her own deep insecurities. Because Pam was safe and sound, the situation was handled with grace rather than harsh punishment. Shelley was ordered to undergo mandatory counseling to address her deep-rooted abandonment issues and to pay Pam full restitution for the destroyed art supplies. Shelley ultimately moved to another town, starting fresh with a commitment to bettering her mental health and learning to communicate her feelings honestly. Pam's return to Prescott was a cause for massive celebration. The town threw a beautiful, joyous welcome home party in the park. Her father, Paul, hugged her tightly, tears of immense joy streaming down his face. Her sister baked a giant, colorful cake, and her boyfriend Bobby surprised her with a brand new, empty leather portfolio, a beautiful symbol of a fresh, unwritten future. Pam realized that her talent was not contained within the pages of a single book, but resided safely within her own creative mind and capable hands. With renewed determination and the unwavering support of her wonderful family, she applied to the Beauty and Fashion College. To her absolute delight, she was accepted with a full scholarship based on a few salvage sketches and her incredible, inspiring story of resilience. Ray successfully completed his rigorous aviation training in California, taking to the bright blue skies as a commercial pilot, always enjoying the magnificent view from above the clouds. Both the lovely town of Kannapolis and the majestic town of Prescott learned beautiful, enduring lessons. They learned that while jealousy and miscommunication can cast a temporary, confusing shadow, the bright light of truth, forgiveness, and community will always shine through. Shirley Pierce lived happily ever after with her devoted husband, Chuck, continuing to spread her Southern charm and charity. And young Pam Pitt sketched entirely new dreams,